pull this stuff up here on the phone. Oh boy. All right. We are live.
Good evening.
Hello, dude. You had a fun day.
Yeah, I'm exhausted.
You poor baby.
I am windburned. I got to fish with the Duke of Hamburg today.
El Jefe.
El Jefe, yes. We had an absolute riot. We're not going to talk about how we caught him on Erie, but yeah, we had a good bag. Better be worried about that Douglas Derby.
I ain't worried. I don't need no practice.
Practice.
We talking about practice?
We play to win the game.
Well, welcome everybody back to another Serious Angler podcast, Monday Night Live, episode number 133. John Hunter should be joining us tonight at some point. My biggest theory right now is he shot a deer and he's tracking a deer, but he should be joining us here soon. So should be fun talking to him about the opens. He's also an FLW Pro Circuit angler, which is now the Big Five. Big Five. Yeah. That's going to be interesting news. Talk to him about that. Get his opinion.
So how's hunting going?
Dude, it's been good, but I guess, obviously not great because we haven't put anything on the ground yet. Because, I saw a lot of things. I went out the other day. I was on the way to my girlfriend's house, and she's taking her doctorate and was doing work most of the day. So instead of bothering her, I went to state land and put in like 8 or 9 miles on state land. It was like 20 mile an hour wind, so I just put wind in my face and tried tracking, like kind of spot and stalk. And towards the end of the day, found some mature does. I had a doe tag for that area in New York, and dude, I creeped all the way up to within 30 yards of them, and I picked out a shooting lane, and they were coming right towards that shooting lane. So I drew back and I waited. She just needed to take 2 more steps, and I had her head was in the shooting lane. 2 more steps, her vitals where it would have been in the shooting lane. And what do you know? I hear this loud noises of people talking, and it's youth weekend. So these pheasant hunters are walking down. They're like, "Oh, look, a deer!" And like they're talking loud and everything. Deer run off. They look over, see me like this, looking at them, and they're like, "Oh, sorry about that." And I was livid. I was livid.
You know what that means, right?
What?
You're not supposed to be deer hunting. You should have been on the lake somewhere.
You're probably right. 20 mile an hour winds, though. I don't know where I would have been. They were west.
You could have got on any west bank of a Finger Lake and been fine.
Yeah, I guess you're right. But I want some venison, man. Our freezer's getting empty.
Yeah, I need some. None of my friends who hunt have gotten a deer yet that I'm close enough to steal some venison and jerky from. It's actually starting to become sad.
I will do my best to get you some.
It's fine if you don't. So yeah,
we're gonna talk about the while we're waiting for John here. We believe he ran into some trouble with either communication or he possibly is out in the woods too. But we're gonna talk about some different topics that we looked at our social media that some followers sent in, some different things that we looked at, like we would put out stuff about, your biggest weakness or different things like that, questions for the podcast. And somebody asked a question about your practice breakdown. And I thought that was kind of interesting because I feel like your practice breakdown can kind of vary depending on what lake you're at or what species you're chasing or kind of like what strategy, I guess, you wanted to unfold for the tournament. So I guess for you being a big, Great Lakes smallmouth guy, how do you kind of approach practice typically?
I try to keep things as simple as possible. And the biggest thing is wind. I want to know what the wind is doing. So if I know the tournament is going to be Saturday and my practice day is Wednesday, I want to go look for contour lines that align to the wind on Saturday, so I can understand possibly where the fish might be sitting, because they're smallmouth, they change based on current and everything. So you just have to align yourself. There's so many rock piles and contour lines on my end of Lake Erie and Buffalo. It's all current based, so they could be on the southeast side one day of that and the northwest side the next day, all based on the wind direction. So I try to figure that out, and I have a lot of waypoints, but it's seasonal, so I want to know what time of year it is, and the wind direction is absolutely vital, depending on what side of the break I'm going to fish on those contour lines and humps and shoals.
Right. Let me ask you this, because this has been an interesting topic that I'm still curious about. I feel like they both apply. I'm just gonna lay it out there. So when it comes to current or wind, because so obviously even like a Lake Ontario, Lake Erie has current, right? Because the natural flow of the water will go from west to east.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at, like, say, a hump, when you look at a hump, do you think the fish will, in your mind, do the fish stack up on the back end of current? So say the east end, the backside, where it'll create like a pool of where there's no current, or do you feel like the fish stack up on the front facing the current, but on the bottom so that the current rides over them while waiting for that bait to then be pushed towards them? What is your opinion?
So I think they can be on any of those spots at any time. So you have to be very open to your thoughts. There's really, smallmouth don't read books. You know, everybody talks about the book of bass fishing and what they're supposed to do. What I found is most of the time with smallmouth, where they should be, they're not, and where they shouldn't be, they are. So the biggest difference is when they're up on top of the hump or in front of it. That's usually when they're feeding or they're activated. You could fish the same hump 95 times, and throughout the day you'll notice that they'll be on the front of it, and then they'll fall off to the back, and then they'll move back up onto the front, and they constantly shift on that rock pile or to the next rock pile over. They just disappear altogether. And I think a lot of it has to do with when they are ready to feed.
Right.
And it's current based. So if they're not feeding at the moment and they're waiting for something just come by and they're going to eat it, opportunity, they're going to kind of hide behind that boulder or stay out of the current. Those are usually your big, fat, lazy ones.
Right. See, that was my theory. And this could be entirely wrong, but the way I look at it is on the front side, these fish that are facing the current, I feel like are going to be much more aggressive, much easier to catch in my mind, because they're going to be in the current a little bit, but they're going to have to be much more aggressive to therefore feed, right? Those are going to be your active feeding fish, at least in my mind. That's how I look at it.
No,
like on that backside, the ones that are in that pool where there isn't much current, that they're sitting on the edge of the current, right, in that pool, waiting for that bait. Like you said, those are going to be your fat and lazy fish, which I think will still bite.
Oh, yeah.
But they're just not going to be as aggressive, I think. But I don't know. It's an interesting theory. But
and at times, those fish behind the pool will move up on front of it as well. So
right. Well, here's John. He's calling me right now. We'll see what the story is.
Perfect.
Hey, John. What's going on, man? Awesome. Did you get the email, the invite? Okay, let me shoot that over to you, and we'll get you on here. All right. We'll see you in a second. All right. Unfortunately, John's phone died, but we're going to get him on here. We'll get him on.
It happens.
We'll start talking fishing. It happens to the best of us.
The best.
We're going to send him another invite, and we're going to get him on the show. So be patient with us here. Hold tight. John Hunter will be joining us. Sounds like he had a long day in the woods or a long day on the lake. Either way, it sounds like he had a fun day.
I'm not envious because I
am.
got
I'm
to catch
envious.
a giant smallmouth today. So
I know, you jerk. What rods were you throwing today with that? With what you were throwing?
I use the X Matrix 724 casting, and
Right.
then when I was dragging, I actually used the 744 X Matrix. I just got one, so it was a really good dragging long line rod. And those were the only two rods I really used until we went to the river, and then I threw a big chandelier around, and I was throwing the X Matrix 765F with the 6.3-1 Tatula. Nice. Yeah, 20-pound fluoro.
I think I'm going to pick up a 784 for Chickamauga next month for a mag draft.
I like it.
So
dude, I think that 765 will be good. It's rated up to 3 ounces. That 65F. I think that'll be a good mag draft rod.
Throw one on it and tell me how you like it.
I only got 6. I've thrown the 6-incher on it. It throws it like a dream, so I can imagine the 8 is fine.
All right, I'll bring the 8, and then we'll get.
When do you go? When do you go? The end of November?
Yeah, November 21st.
You want to take it? The 765 and try it?
We got John Hunter, who just joined the queue. We'll get him on here. What's going on, John?
What's going on, guys?
Hey, man.
How you been, dude?
Good.
Wild day? What you been doing today?
Today, today was a little bit relaxed. When I'm home, I do some real estate business. So today I just got caught up on some of that stuff, and also kind of laid some stuff out for my next trip of events. Ordered some tackle that we needed. I needed a couple extra rods and some certain actions. Because come Thursday, I'm hitting the road for nearly 3 weeks of fishing. So it's kind of weird this time of the year. We're usually just thinking about deer hunting. But it's a little different year now. Tournaments through the fall. So getting ready.
How do you feel about that?
Fall fishing's always a little tough, which I kind of like. Adds a whole new layer to it. A lot of guys don't fish this time of the year. A lot of us spend time in the woods. So it's cool, man. It's different. The weather's going to be incredible the next couple of weeks. So it's not going to be a scorcher like a lot of our tournaments midsummer are. So it's pretty cool change. I kind of like it.
Absolutely.
All right. Now that was one thing I was going to ask you too, because like we chatted over social because you'd participated in youth weekend. It looked like took some kids out. One got a giant buck. So huge congrats to him. But it's got to be a tough decision for you as choosing between the woods and the lake.
Yeah, it is tough. I really do like hunting, but this year I've just kind of accepted the fact that won't be doing much of it. I'm gonna miss a good chunk of it. I get to go a couple weekends, but man, like what we did this weekend, taking the kids out, that's I'd rather do that than go hunt myself, really.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's got to be a pretty cool moment when you knew that deer was down and that kid. Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
I was personally jealous because I've never shot a buck that big, and that kid's less or more than half my age, younger than me.
He's 6 years old, so he doesn't really know how great he's got it there.
Right. Yeah, he's going to be 17, 18 years old, look back and realize how big that freaking deer was.
Yeah.
But good for him. But, so you mentioned you ordered rods. This was something I was going to ask you too, because I was kind of curious, because I believe Chad Pipkins is also with them.
Yes.
Suede rods. So how new are they? Because I actually learned about them from your Instagram when you first started posting about them. I was just curious.
Yeah, so Suede's been around about 2 years. Last year, 2019, was their first year, selling fishing rods. And now they've developed a lot more actions. Chad and I have each designed a couple of our own rods. I haven't even announced it yet, so this is kind of the first I've really said anything about it, but they'll be coming out shortly in the coming months. And Chad's done a few, so we're constantly building the lineup, but man, they've really got everything covered. That's what's pretty cool. When I joined up, Sam is the guy who who's, the creator of Sway, and he did such a good job of really establishing what we need. Us as fishermen think we need like literally an action for every technique, and you really don't. There's quite a few rods that double over for a handful of them. So I think they only start out with maybe 8, 9 actions between spinning and casting, but it was perfect. Had everything covered. But yeah, man, we're keep adding more, and we got all the bases covered. And it's a sweet rod.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm always curious about different new companies, especially the ones I've never heard before, and different things like that. But I have some more questions with that. But before we get into that, get into the thicket of the podcast, the first question we like to ask everybody, that's especially new to the show, is your first experience catching your first bass, getting into fishing. Who kind of introduced you to that and the whole 9 yards?
Okay, so that little boy I took hunting this weekend is my uncle's kid, so my cousin.
Right.
And so I owe a lot to him. And, whenever I have the opportunity to take one of them fishing, I always do, because he's the one who got me into fishing. Neither of my parents are, big into fishing. So it would have been foreign to me if it weren't for him. When I was 8 years old, he lived on Lake Lanier, and we went down there for Easter. And we went out on his boat, and, that time of the year, they're on the beds down there. And we went out, and he had a bullet at the time. We went around the corner of the pocket by his house, and there was like a 5-pounder locked on the bed. And what felt like an hour was probably 10 minutes. But I remember him pitching, and he hooked it and handed me the rod. And I reeled it in, and that was my first fish. It was a 5-pounder. And that was pretty much all he had to do, because I was ready, man. And right after that, I just had to have my own rod. So he went and bought me my own fishing rod and a little tackle box full of baits and sent me home. We went home to Kentucky, and I was just a fishing pool from there on.
Heck yeah. That's pretty sweet. First fish is a 5-pounder.
Yeah.
Spoiled from the start.
Yeah, no doubt.
Good stuff.
So,
go ahead, Bailey.
I was just going to say, is your family then like an outdoorsy family? Or are you kind of that first one besides obviously your uncle introduced
No, my dad, like he enjoys hunting. He just never was, big into fishing.
Right.
But my uncle definitely got me into the fishing and into hunting too. He was the one who got my dad into hunting, so he kind of got us all into it.
That's sweet.
Yep.
Andrew, go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to.
I was going to say, your first fish is a 5-pounder. Mine was like a 6-inch yellow perch. So
mine could have been more, something like that when I was really little, on the Snoopy pole or something. But first bass, memorable bass that I remember, actually largemouth I remember catching, was that one for sure.
Right.
That's awesome.
So when did tournaments start for you? When did you what introduced you to that scene, and how'd that get rolling?
So when I was 16, I had my license. I still had a Suzuki RM 125 two-stroke dirt bike, and wasn't riding it a lot anymore, but loved fishing, dude. I was like farm pond, golf course pond, every pond I could go, I was going to. And I always wanted to fish tournaments. You always watch Bassmasters, idol those guys, and I was trying to figure out a way I could do that. So I put on Craigslist. I was a big wheeler and dealer growing up. So on Craigslist, I put my Suzuki RM 125 up there for sale or trade, and had some calls. And I finally saw a Phantom, a 1983 Phantom bass boat on there listed for like $3,000. And my dirt bike couldn't have been worth more than $1,000. And so I call the guy up, and I'll tell him I'll trade him straight up. So, well, let me come look at it. He came and looked at it. Deal. So that was my first bass boat. It barely ran. I think I fished maybe a tournament or two, and it would break down. But it got me out there. It got me, a taste of tournament fishing. And I later sold that boat for much more than I bought it for, luckily, and then was able to get into, I think I bought like a 94 ebb tide for exactly what I sold that one for. And it got me out there and was able to fish a little more. And I just grew up fishing a local tournament, like a Tuesday night jackpot tournament. That was my first tournament I ever fished. and grew up fishing those through high school. And really didn't fish anything else, man, because I was so into baseball. I was big into baseball, summer ball, travel ball. So that's all I really did was just, every time there'd be a tournament on called Taylorsville Lake or Guest Creek, these two tiny little lakes for the house, I would go fish them. And that's kind of where I got my start. It wasn't until college fishing where I really was able to kind of spread my wings and become more diverse and see other fisheries.
Right. So I'm curious. So a while back, when I was trying to become more well-versed with a jerkbait, your name had popped up with some podcasts on, how to be more, what's the word I'm looking for, more versatile with a jerkbait. So when did that kind of take off for you? And that was going to be one of my questions about Swait. I'm assuming one of your rods coming out has to be a jerkbait rod, because that's kind of one of your go-tos, is it not?
It isn't, because they have one that's so good for it already. Okay. They have like a 610 medium heavy that's like I couldn't do anything better to it. I'm like, well, we've got it. We don't need, no sense in wasting another action. So they've got it nailed. That rod, if you all looking for it, that's the one. But no, so jerkbait fishing, like I said, in high school, all I ever knew until I got to college, when I finally decided to quit college baseball and join the fishing team and start traveling the country fishing. I never threw a jerkbait, growing up. It was literally a square bill and jig and a spinnerbait, just shallow, dirty fishing. Catch 8 pounds, you win. Which it does help me these days growing up fishing that way, because you have the grinder mentality. But the jerkbait really kind of evolved when I got to college, and even when I was fishing co-angler. College, I remember I got second or third at Lake of the Ozarks Big Bass Bash on a jerkbait. And that's when I was like, oh, this thing does catch big ones. I like this thing. And then when it really took it to the next level in 2015, I fished the co-angler series in the FLW tour and traveled with a guy named Spencer Sheffield. I'm sure you're all familiar with the name. Yep. Spencer still fishes. It's actually back. He took some time off back fishing FLW tour, and he is a stellar fisherman. And I traveled with him, practicing with him. And he's probably one of the better jerkbait fishermen there are. And so I learned a lot from Spencer, watched him. He kind of mentored me through that. And I just kind of, from there, I bet I won a majority of the money that year fishing co-angler or the back of the boat on a jerkbait. One co-angler of the year, and I'd say maybe not half, but a good chunk of them were jerking. A lot of places you wouldn't throw it.
Right.
And then I kind of just kept it rolling into my professional career. Almost got a win on it in Florida a couple different times, but it's just a killer bait that plays a lot of times when you really wouldn't think it would.
Right. Yeah, and that's one of our buddies who we know is one of your friends, Steve Mui. We were talking to him today.
Oh, yeah.
He was mentioning how the jerkbait is so underrated, which is pretty similar to what you just mentioned. But yeah, it's a bait that not a lot of guys, I believe a lot of guys overlook, or they just don't simply want to throw it because they're afraid of the wrist pain.
Yeah, for sure. It's just, and a lot of times you're catching a little different fish. If so many people want to fish on the bottom because it feels right, especially a lot of people who are new. But man, a lot of times fish aren't living on the bottom. A lot of times they're suspended on cover, or suspended on, structure or grass, or over little bars, or, whatever it may be, rock. They're not actually living on the bottom. Certain conditions may drive them down or suspend them up, but I think you're just catching a different fish.
Right.
Unless you're at those crystal clear fisheries, and they'll come up 20 feet. So.
Yeah, we have a fishery around here that's kind of like that. It's crystal clear, so you can throw a jerkbait over 20, 25 foot.
Yeah.
Only goes down. Like you can throw just a 110, and they'll come up from the bottom. And
to be honest, that's all I throw. Lots of 110. I rarely throw a +1, even when you think you would need it. The 110 has more dart, and it's just a little quicker and snappier. and I feel like it gets more action and gets more more strikes than that kind of wider 110 plus one.
All right.
And I think the plus one only dives like a foot or two deeper than the 110, right?
Exactly. I can get the 110 almost to the plus one range. So I'm like, what's a foot, even 2 feet if they're coming that far? I mean, why wouldn't they come another foot?
Right.
And it's incredible what fish, and I didn't really know it until, some advancements in sonar, but how, even when the water isn't crystal clear, but how they know, when a bait's really far above them. Like, I'm talking just a little drop shot worm. Like, you'll sometimes watch fish and your visibility may only be 3 to 4 feet, and you'll be sitting over 20 feet, and you'll open your bail and watch your bait go down. And it can be literally 4 feet below shoulder and the fish is already coming off the bottom. I mean, that just tells you that isn't throwing off any vibration. It's not throwing off any, they really know what's around them.
Right.
So like a jerkbait over, it doesn't always have to be as clear as what you think it is, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, everyone, when they think about a jerkbait rod, they think, like a 7-foot medium, something that's got a fast tip, that sort of deal, like 10, 12-pound fluorocarbon. Do you do anything like kind of out of the ordinary, or is you?
If I'm open water, 7 foot's okay. I just don't want to hit like my gun hole in the water a lot. So like a 6'11" or a 6'10" is good. I do like a faster action than some people. You don't really want too moderate because like when you're snapping it, I do a really erratic retrieve, and when you're snapping it, it absorbs too much and doesn't translate that action into the bait. You fluorocarbon, it has a little bit of stretch and make it long cast. And if you got too limber and too moderate of a rod, it's just all the rods soaking up all the action, and you're not really getting, you're not putting what you need to into the bait.
Yeah, it's pushing the jerkbait forward instead of actually snapping.
Yeah, for sure. And the rod's loading up too much, so it's not like the bait just isn't getting the snap it needs.
Right. Interesting. Do you replace the hooks on your 110?
Yeah.
That's always a question I have for a lot of people if they do or not. Andy, I don't think you do, right? You keep the hooks on your 110?
Them, yeah.
I keep them on. The only hook I think I would change them to is probably an ST36 owner, like a size 6.
Yeah.
Like that matches pretty good. So I'm probably going to start dabbling around with that because I'm sick of them flexing out on smallies.
Andy, you've kept them on in the past?
What's that? Those Megabass ones?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have issues with landing fish with them. I horse fish too much, so I bend them out when I boat flip them.
Yeah.
So they're not a boat flipping type of hook on a 4-pound Lake Erie smallmouth.
Yeah. No doubt. Yeah.
So, but I mean, other than that, they if it swipes at it, they're hooking that fish with those Megabass hooks. They're so sticky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No doubt.
But they bend.
Yeah. Well, talking smallmouth. I mean, talking about your year so far. I mean, how's 2020 been for you in your mind with your performance?
I've had a decent opens season. I'm like top 10 in the points. I think there are some around it. I was a little bummed I didn't make the top 50 or top 50 championship. The first day of St. Clair, I was, I think, right, close to it. And the next day, I just couldn't quite catch them enough to get in there. But it really just boils down to like 1 or 2 finishes. All in all, the year wasn't awful. It was just a couple tournaments that really killed me. So I mean, I can't say I'm like pleased. I'm really pleased with it on the FLW front, but I guess it could always be a little worse. But I definitely, if I'm not making that end of year championship, then I'm not happy about it. And then the opens, like I said, we're rolling, so I'm just going to try and keep it up.
Yeah, and you're right on the bubble. We were looking this up prior to today, and you're sitting in 11th, so you're right on that bubble there.
Yeah, I mean, prior to Hartwell, I was 3rd, and pretty good control. Had like a 40-point lead on 4th, but just I had that. What's really frustrating at Hartwell, had all the bites to make it happen, and
Right.
You knew I wasn't going to get a lot of bites because I was running the cane pile topwater deal and just wasn't. Knew I wasn't going to get a lot, wasn't getting a lot, was getting the right ones and had the right ones the first day, and they just came off, man. And it just can't have it happen.
It's fishing.
Yeah, it was a bummer. I didn't need that. That really killed me and put me back into a spot where I can't have any more hiccups. So I was have to, finish strong in those.
Right.
So out of the next, because there's 4 opens left, 2 Central, 2 Eastern. Which one are you looking forward to the most?
I never say that because it never fails. The one if I were to tell you one, I would.
All right, perfect. I like the answer. That's fair enough.
I'm looking
all
forward
of them.
Looking forward to none of them.
Got it. All right, fair enough.
You hear that a lot of times now. Is guys always say that, like, if there's one that's highlighted, that's the one to do the worst at.
It never fails. Never.
I wonder if is that a mental thing? Like maybe you think about that too much, and it almost it makes you over practice, or maybe it's just a fisherman's what's the word? What I'm looking for? A jinx, I guess.
I don't know what it is. The more honestly, the more I think about a tournament and the more tackle and crap I order and the more rods I rig and the more studying I do, the crappier I do. Usually when I just say, I'm just going to go, like a lot of times if you don't even have time going from one to the next, you didn't even really have time to prepare or think, that's the one that I just roll out there and go fishing and do well in. So,
right.
Trying
to take practice, just show up with a jerk bait and just go to work.
Yeah, trying to do that a little more these last few tournaments is not do less preparation, still do the proper amount of prep, but just don't get too carried away, and because a lot of times it can make you spread out or overthink it when sometimes it's just simpler than you think.
Right.
The last thing you want to do is spin.
Yeah.
So next thing you know, your spots are 60 miles down each side of the lake, and you burn 4 hours running. That's never good.
Never done well. When I do well, I'm in an area and I'm keeping it wet as long as possible.
Yeah.
So you're not the running gun type. You're more of just break it down, break it apart.
Yeah, that's definitely me. I mean, don't get me wrong. If the tournament scenario calls for you to hit multiple spots in a day, that's good. But I'm going to find them in a concentrated area, like Rayburn, it was a pile thing, but I made sure when I realized it was a pile deal, I was like, okay, I'm going to find every pile that has bass on it. I've figured it out. I have a day and a half more, and I'm going to do it into this circle. Like, not even going to look anywhere else, because if I go down there and I catch a big one, then I'm going to feel inclined to go 4, 6, 7 miles down the lake and hit that pile when there's another one in this 2 mile area that has them too.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. You're just increasing your odds of catching not only quality bites, but possibly that big one, because those Texas lakes have big ones everywhere.
Yeah.
So
sure.
The longer you're in the water, the higher your chances are probably to catch that bigger one. I know nothing about fishing in Texas, so I just know Lake Erie out of Buffalo and the Finger Lakes.
Yeah, that's not a bad place to be either.
No. So, oh man,
that Buffalo, that Eastern Basin special, man. Like, and it's kind of cool, really. I mean, it sucks, but it's also cool that there's just a lot of big events don't go there because of all the factors. It just gets so gnarly. But I've been up there. I've spent 5 or 6 days there for a Costa, and it was a blast.
Now you, I think I saw you one time a couple of years when you were on the Elite Series the first time. I think you actually were in Buffalo. We had a tournament that day, and I saw your boat come by. You can't miss it. The Texas Roadhouse wrapped. I think you were running back then. Was it a Phoenix back then? Now it's Falcon, right?
A Falcon with a Suzuki, probably.
Oh, when they first came out?
Yeah.
Like it was 2016, I think.
2016, yeah.
So I remember it was like opening weekend, June. And I knew the Elites were coming through New York that time, and I was like, that looks like John Hunter's boat. I ended up winning the tournament. So
I think we stopped and fished. I really do. I think Brett Pruitt and I stopped and put in there at the ramp, whatever ramp that is there.
Back then was when you launched in the middle of the harbor as opposed to the new ones that you launched at the Costa.
See, I knew that was weird. When I went for the coast, I was like, man, I don't remember all this. Like, this looks weird, but I just thought I'd just forgotten about it. I knew it looked different.
Yeah, they put a couple $1 million renovation into that place. But yeah, I actually spent all day out on Erie today, so it was pretty good.
Awesome, man.
I know Andy had a question for you pertaining to the FLW that we wanted to touch upon. And did you want to get into that?
Yeah, so how do you feel about it now changing into the Big Five?
I mean, in my opinion, it's cool. Like, you know, like the rebrand, you know, could be a good thing. But in my opinion, it's still, you know, still the same thing, same, you know, where we're going out there. And I love the Big Five format. You know, I never want to go away from it. I really like Five Fish format. So, you know, I'm pleased we're rolling with that. I think it's a cool name, and we'll try and make the brand, you know, make it a cool deal, and hopefully it'll take off.
Right. Well, that being said, then, you know, like, are you the kind of guy where you, do you have a career goal of only the elites, only, you know, Big Five, or do you want to be the guy like a John Cox who's doing both just because you're an opportunistic angler and you like tournaments?
No, I tell you what, wherever I end up, I'm just going to try and represent myself and my sponsors in the best way I can and catch as much weight as I can every day and kick whoever's butt I'm fishing against. Like, that's just my mentality. You know, I'm just going to try and do the best I can wherever I'm at. Like, you know, when I was fishing FLW Tour this year, I wasn't thinking about the Opens. I was thinking about how I can do the best I can in this tournament. And then when I went to the Opens, just how can I do the best I can to qualify and have options. It's always better to have options at the end of the season, and just try and figure out what's best for you in your career.
Fish the moment. Yeah.
Yep. And if I end up qualifying, then I'll kind of sit back and look like and just try and see what's best for me and then make that decision.
Right. Without a doubt. That's a great answer. Is there a certain region of the country you kind of get more excited to go fish, or you kind of have more I know you say you don't look forward to tournaments, obviously, because of the whole let's call it the fisherman's jinx at this point, but something you kind of have like a more of a personal excitement for because you know that you're going to have a lot more fun there.
Yeah, I mean, how do you not look forward to going up where Andy is? I mean, that's the best. That's the most exciting. I mean, going up there and fishing those beautiful fisheries and just Great Lakes. I mean, really, it's hard to beat that whole system. And also, Florida can be exciting because you know you're in the land of the big heads. So those two places are fun, and I look forward to them the most because usually Florida is the beginning of the year. It's cold as hell in Kentucky. It's freezing. And it's dark at 5, and you know it's just gloomy. And you get to go sit in the sunshine and maybe catch a 10-pounder. So nothing to hate about that. And then the most, I mean, I would say number one. So you know, going up north, it's hard to beat.
Yeah. Do you kind of have a preference then, smallmouth versus largemouth,
or spots?
Well, I really don't know. Spots I always suck on those. Really, I mean, I don't know the last time or if I've ever had a really good spotted bass tournament. I made a top 10 at Smith Lake one time, but I ran up the river and got largemouth. So I really can't recall. I mean, maybe I've had one good one, but they always burn me.
Yeah, it's always a interesting topic for Andy and I because obviously Andy and I are both from New York, but Andy's on Lake Erie, 10 minutes from the ramp, so he's a big smallmouth head. And for me, I live 30 minutes from Cayuga, so I'm in the heart of the Finger Lake, so I can kind of choose which one I want to go for. But spotted bass is something neither of us have any experience with. So anytime we get to talk spotted bass, we kind of have like an added interest because we've never faced them before. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah. And you got anything?
They're not that cool.
They just fight hard, and it's hard to catch big ones, I guess. Like anything over like 3-pounder, unless you're on specific lakes, is like a trophy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So, Andy, do you have anything for John before we ask some final couple questions?
No, I think we covered most of it here, so that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, John, prior to you coming on the show, we were talking about we had put on our social media. We put out these like debate questions here and there, kind of like for kind of like an interactive thing. And at the end, we put on a little segment of, what's your biggest weakness? And we thought that'd be something to bring up every now and then on the show as like a talking point. And someone had submitted how to kind of set up and arrange their practice, like a practice strategy. So obviously that can change depending on what region of the country you're going to, kind of how that like setting up. But when it comes to practice, typically, how do you kind of like to approach, whether you're prep or what it may be?
Yeah. Sorry, 1 second. I got a new puppy and she's barking.
Completely okay.
So that's a good question. So I'll just kind of take you through what I was thinking about. I'm going to Neely Henry next week, place I've never been to. So this is a perfect. It's really kind of a perfect starting point. So one thing I did is I did a little research on some history, past tournaments, kind of, and there hasn't been a ton this time of the year, but just kind of see historically what area of the lake has produced. And, it's kind of been, seems to me, mid-lake, up the river can both be good. And then I try and just say, okay, it's the fall, what goes down in the fall, the bait a lot of times will move to the backs of the creeks. The water's, water temperature's cooling off. So I might want to look mid-lake, backs of creeks, and then also maybe run up the river a day or two. And a lot of times what I like to do is I like to say, okay, I'm going to try this section of the lake and this section of the lake. And then I'm going to say, and if you only have 3 days of practice, you go boom, and, these two sections. And then figure out which way, one of them was good the next day, and the next day the other one was bad. I'm going all in the third day here. Like I said, I really like to dive these past year or so. I've really gotten to be where I like to dial in a certain section of a lake. I don't like to run all over the place, but you do need to sample different areas because it can definitely go down in one area and not be going down in the other. So that's why I like to kind of sample a couple and then really try and dial it in one area.
Nice. Interesting. I like that. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
Andy, you got any last questions for John here before we ask him our final question?
Hit him with
right.
it, Bailey. It's
So
a good one.
John, we have one question, like kind of like our introductory question. We have a question we like to ask everybody new to the show to kind of close things out and to wrap up. And that question is, if you could sit down, have a steak and a beer with any 3 people, they don't have to be the fishing industry. They could be from 400 years ago, or they could be current. Who would you invite to sit down and pick their brain?
Wow, that is a tough,
It's loaded
tough question.
with no prep either. So just kind of gets thrown at you.
Yeah.
We give no heads up on purpose.
Yeah, no, that's good. Okay. This is really hard.
It's cool to hear the different answers because you can it's kind of like a lifestyle question almost. You can look into somebody's brain. Like who was like a childhood hero or maybe like a sport or something.
Yeah.
To.
No, that's a tough question. So growing up, I always really liked baseball. And also football. I was a big Denver Broncos fan growing up. And so I would say one of them would have to be, it's no, scratch that. I'm going to go, honestly, if it had to be anybody in the world, it would be my dad, my uncle, because those are like the 2 dudes that like raised me and, taught me everything I know.
Right.
And I'm going to give a split between God and my grandpa, my late grandpa who's passed away. Those 3 are like the dudes that I look up to the most. So if I could, or those 4, but if I could sit down and have a beer and a steak dinner with any of those any day, like if I had to just pick 3, that's who it would be.
Heck yeah. I like that answer.
Yep.
That's pretty sweet, man.
Yeah, man.
Awesome. Well, John, we just want to say thank you big fan of
late. Yeah, sorry about that.
We placed a bet
No
saying
worries.
that you got a deer and you're coming back in late. So we're like,
I wish.
probably.
That's what we assumed. We assumed he had put one on the ground, and we're like, dang, he's having a lot better day than we are.
That would be cool.
But no, a huge thank you for taking the time to come on, man. We really appreciate it, and the viewers always appreciate it. And when we learned a lot from today too. We always appreciate the tips and tricks and your time. It's been fun, man.
And
Thanks
best
for
of luck here in the final leg.
Yeah, we'll be rooting for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Heck yeah, man.
I always like luck, man.
Oh yeah.
Without a doubt. All right, John. Take care. Have a good night.
Have a
See
good
ya.
night.
Bye. Dude, that was fun. That was good. I really would have. I wished that he actually, the story was he actually put a deer down, not his phone dying.
Yeah, that'd have been amazing.
I know,
Like,
that would have been
wow.
great. I was hoping that he'd like join the stream and it was like him tracking it, have like a live look. That would have been so cool.
That would have been awesome.
But nope, just technology failing us once again.
Always. It seems
Yeah.
like these last few weeks it's technology.
All right.
Something. It's always something.
Yeah. Well, dude, looking here at the standings, so the Central Opens. Now he's 11th in open, just general opens, correct?
Yep, that's a combined. So the
Yeah.
people who are fishing both.
So if we look at this, I mean, he's around the bubble, man. He really is.
He's on the bubble.
So he's really not too far. So it's what, top 4? Correct?
Yeah. And
So
minus
he's-
double qualifiers.
Right. So let's see. So there's Jason Christie, who should qualify through that. He'll qualify for the Easterns. So let's see. That's another one off the list. Let's see. I think Scott Martin as well qualified to the Central. No, Eastern.
East.
So there's another one. So that's 2. Let's see. I wonder if Justin Atkins is on. Justin Atkins is not. Let's see. There's. Hey, shout out to KJ Queen. Queen Tackle represent. Sitting in 10th. Let's see. I don't see. So that's at least 2 guys off. So technically he's sitting in 9th. So he would have to chase. He's only like 40 points behind. I mean, he's right there.
Yeah, if he comes in 40th and everybody above him finishes 150th, he's doing great.
All right. No doubt. That would be pretty sweet. I'm rooting for him. That would be cool to see him come back on the Elite Series. But
Not a lot of people get a
Yeah.
second chance to qualify for the Elite Series, so that'd be
Right.
huge.
Right. Yeah. So huge thank you again to John for coming on.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. And again, huge shout out to all of our sponsors. Thank you guys for your constant support. We're stepping up the game here with the Serious Angler podcast. We got some changes coming soon.
We say this every time. Big news announcement.
Yeah, so big news coming, and it's going to be announced at the end of the month. But we are also making changes to the podcast. So each episode, you might see some different things going on with the screen, with our, kind of the layout, the format of the shows. But
please give us some input too on what you think we could do better, or how we can make the layout better so it can look better. Bailey is the mastermind behind all of that, so give us some info.
I'm the 2 brain cells behind it. the little what is it? The little train that could. What is
yes,
it
yes, the little train that could. You're like the simple mastermind,
right?
So
right.
If the block fits.
Exactly what Andy said too. Yeah, if you guys have any feedback, whether it's on reviews, on podcast applications, ratings, where you guys can leave a comment in the YouTube section, or reach out to us on social media. We really would appreciate the feedback to make the show better for the experience of you guys, as well as ourselves, and most importantly, our guests, because we all want to learn here. We all want to get better. We all want to talk fish and have a good time. So we really appreciate that. And check out our sponsors link down below. We would appreciate it. But stick with us for these changes coming up here soon. They're all for the better, and we're going to see where we can take this thing. But it's been a blast. Andy, you got anything closing out for tonight?
I just want to tell everybody, enjoy the fall. If you're a hunter, stay safe now that we're getting into the heart of hunting season. None of our followers or any hunters out there, we don't wish any ill will or being in the way of, like said, friendly fire that seems to happen every year. Yeah, just be careful out there. And anybody who is fishing, wear your life jacket now that the wind is blowing, the water's getting cold. Yep. Stay warm, stay safe, and
fish with a friend.
What was that?
Fish with a friend.
Fish with a friend, absolutely. It's not the time of year to play around. Anything could happen pretty quick, so just be safe. And
you can't stress. And on the flip side, I can't stress that too enough with kayaking. I'll admit, I'm guilty of it. I'm stubborn. I don't like to go fish with people because, one, I like to fish my honey holes, and I don't want to show anybody that. And two, it's one of those things where, sometimes you don't like fishing with people because you want to, like I said, you want to keep stuff to yourself, but safety is number one. So especially if you're in the kayak, try to fish with a friend or share somebody your location. I always share my location with my parents and my girlfriend so they all know where I'm going to be. So for worst comes to worst, knock on wood, something goes wrong, they know where my last location was. So like Andy said, be safe, guys. Have a great fall. Hopefully these podcasts are going to keep coming, staying successful. You guys are still learning from them. We're going to keep advancing, making this better for you guys, making this better for our guests. I have fuzzies flying. We're looking forward to it. Hunting, fishing. It's let's make end of 2020 a
good one.
Yeah, let's make the last quarter. I thought I saw a funny tweet. I'll share this before we sign off. I saw a funny tweet the other day that said, hope 2020 is like us playing the Falcons.
Hopefully we're in the fourth quarter and we're coming back, right?
We're coming back. But thank you guys again, as always, for watching and listening. We'll see you guys next time.